I think I probably spent 3,000 or so on Facebook advertising to sell all these lots, which is not bad at all. I mean, when you take into account I don't have a realtor or giving up any commission or anything like that, it's way more expensive than like a pay per list MLS listing, which we utilize those as well. Or, like a land.com, which is a good solid place to list your land on. They charge you like $500 a month or so. If I'm spending $3,000 in 3 months, like $1,000 per month in Facebook marketing, I'd much rather do that because, again, now I have my brand and face and recognition out there. And now I got these customers coming to me. Okay, where else do you have land near Andrews? Where else do you have land in, Midland or West Texas? So Facebook is super powerful.
I mean, and look, some people kind of, frown upon the whole guru and courses and stuff. I say, y'all, if you're going to learn the lessons one way or another, and you may not even learn about the strategies if you don't go out and see who has had success and leaves clues for you. Some choose to make programs out of it. Some write books. Some do YouTube channels. But it is your duty to get out there and explore what's available, because no one's going to take control of your life and your wealth like you will. And you look, these programs, you do enough of them, you start to see common denominators, and you form your own strategy, which you have done, John.
You're listening to the Real Estate Runway podcast, powered by QUATTRO Capital, where we are all about alternative business and investment strategies to help you amplify life and maximize wealth. Here's your host, the recovering engineer turned multifamily investor, Chad Sutton.
All right, Real Estate Runway family. Welcome to yet another episode of the Real Estate Runway podcast. Proud to be back on the air with you all. I've got John Jasniak with me. He's actually sitting, for those on video, in one of his project homes in West Texas. So we'll get to hear that story in a moment. And look, if you guys get any value out of this show or anything Team QUATTRO or Real Estate Runway produces, just interact with it. Whatever button you see, like, subscribe, share, pay it forward. Make sure someone else sees this content. We don't do this for money or for fame or anything. This is just to give value to you and those like you. So make that effort, pay it forward, share it with someone. John, welcome to the show. How are you today, brother?
I'm awesome, Chad. Thank you so much for having me. As you mentioned, we're out here in West Texas, sitting in a paint-covered shirt here trying to get some work done. So it's going to be an exciting day, as always.
I love it. Can't wait to hear that story. And before we get into what you're doing there, tell us about you a little bit. How'd you get into this world? What are you doing? Like just kind of get us to today before we talk about the meat of the show.
Sure. So today, I guess I would call myself a land investor / entrepreneur. But traditionally, I just went through a 4-year college program, came out from Texas Tech as an engineer, hit the 9 to 5. Never really thought I was going to start or own a business, but got into the working world and, didn't really dislike, so to speak, engineering or what I was doing. But then, as a young 20-something-year-old, hit the corporate grind and was like, man, this is not, for me and what I expected. So quickly started to kind of search for avenues out of that and found land investing actually on a podcast like yours. I drop it all the time. The Side Hustle Show with Nick Loper, episode 108. You had another land guru, so to speak, go on there and start talking about this business model. Like, hey, you can buy, 5, 10, 20 acres of land for $5,000 and sell it for 10, 15, 20 grand, in all over the country, really. And so I was kind of fascinated by that concept, ended up buying his course, buying another course, diving into them. And then it was actually less than a month later, I bought my first deal, 53 acres in Hudspeth County, which is West Texas. Paid $8,500, bought it from some dude in Florida who was flipping land like the rest of us. And I turned around and it was already subdivided, which do a lot of subdividing nowadays, but that one was already cut up and I sold it for like 17 G's. So doubled my money, and kind of the rest is history. I started plowing out a bunch of direct mail all over West Texas and slowly snowballed, I guess, to where we're at today, kind of running a multi-million-dollar operation, subdividing, bought the town out here in West Texas, Cornudas. And yeah, it's been over 7 years now. It's crazy. Time flies, I guess, when you're having fun.
Yeah, that's right. And when you're in charge of your own destiny. So I love what you said there. I mean, and look, some people kind of, frown upon the whole guru and courses and stuff. I say, y'all, if you're going to learn the lessons one way or another, and you may not even learn about the strategies if you don't go out and see who has had success and leaves clues for you. Some choose to make programs out of it. Some write books. Some do YouTube channels. But it is your duty to get out there and explore what's available, because no one's going to take control of your life and your wealth like you will. And you look, these programs, you do enough of them, you start to see common denominators, and you form your own strategy, which you have done, John. And so let's kind of rotate into. You just mentioned you bought a town. You kind of glossed over that. What do you mean you bought a town? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I bought the small unincorporated town of Cornudas, Texas. It's 28 acres out, about 50 miles east of El Paso. And we got a cafe, convenience store, motel, RV park, a few mobile homes, which is where I'm sitting right now. And, I bought this sucker. It would have been early 2023. So it's been just about a year now I've owned it. And it's been several hundred thousands of dollars later in improvements and everything. And we're kind of renovating everything and trying to get it back to life. The cafe out here is famous for their burgers. And so we're bringing that back. And I might have my own run at being the grill out here, the chef out here for a little bit. But really interesting story, man. The guy who sold it was behind in back taxes, and he was about to lose the property. And basically, I just found it on Facebook. The realtor had posted on Facebook and had like over 1,000 shares and like thousands and thousands of likes. And I was like, man, that's interesting. It's in the middle of nowhere. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And so it took me kind of a while to pull the trigger on it. But here we are, fast forward, paint covered and learning how to paint and build roofs and all this other stuff.
That's pretty cool. So tell me a little bit about the business plan with that. So, you bought this unincorporated town, 28 acre piece of land. What's the intent? It's to inject some money? Are you building housing? Are you renovating? What's the outcome you're trying to get with this thing?
So preliminarily, it's going to be kind of just a tourist pass through, almost like it called a truck stop or a rest stop. We're going to have some short-term rentals out here because it's close to Guadalupe Mountain National Park. So it's going to be, kind of a self-contained cash flowing project with the cafe and convenience store, then some short-term rentals. No one is really going to live out here. It's not going to have a population, so to speak. I mean, I'll have someone on site full-time living, but it's not going to have a population, at least not to start. Now, the long-term, like Goldilocks, like potential, like, oh my God, utopia is to grow the actual town and buy land in the desert and, then, start doing subdivides and carve out little lots for people to come out and live and kind of grow the desert. Like, is that even possible? Could that even happen? I don't know yet. That is like, it's definitely in the future, but it's definitely a possibility. The problem out here is water. I mean, we have one well on the property that's 900 foot deep and does 2 gallons per minute. So, finding water and setting up the infrastructure is beyond challenging to try and scale the town, so to speak.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so this kind of takes us into your strategy, so talk a little bit about what you're doing. When you say subdividing, I mean, you're acquiring land and doing what with it? Let's talk about the strategy that you've employed that has been successful for you.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about this before the show, and I kind of want to hit it from a high level where the land flipping and land investing industry, I would still say it's a niche. You don't got investor institutional money in it. So there's plenty of, open grounds and feeding for the little guy like me or you who can come in and even with their own fund, such as you have, to do a bunch of land deals. But now you got people like myself and others coming on these podcasts, having coaching programs, et cetera. And it's starting to become a little bit more saturated. And so it's not quite like house wholesaling yet or house flipping or anything like that, where you got people running TV ads and commercials and, huge marketing campaigns, but it's growing in size and growing in competition. And so what I've slowly begun to realize and how my business has evolved is we've started to scale and grow and do bigger deals because there's less competition. And so that leads you into subdividing, which I think subdividing land is the best way to scale a land business. It might be the best way to scale any real estate business just because of the simplicity of it. You could easily by yourself with no team, no employees, anything like that, do one subdivision and make over $1 million and do it within a year's time. So kind of the focus for me right now is buying land in bulk. I like to stay outside of city limits. People kind of have this vision of subdivisions as like the D.R. Hortons or like these massive home builders building like site built homes. You're inside the city doing all this entitlement and engineering. we try to stay as much away from that as possible, outside of city limits, and find the counties and states that are very favorable and either allow you to do nothing other than survey the land, or to build a gravel road, which we do in some projects, run some power, do some horizontal construction or development, so to speak, nothing vertical, and then sell those lots off to Joe Schmo in the city who wants to move out and live on a little to non-restricted piece of land with their livestock or mobile home or build a home or whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So give me a little bit of economics on this. So you're going to go buy, and let's talk kind of practical size too. You're going to go buy
Mm-hmm.
chunk of land. I mean, what's the size of land you're looking for? And when you subdivide these lots, like what's the clientele? You kind of describe the clientele, but what's the, are you setting these up for little single family homes, for massive 4-acre farms? Talk size and economics a little bit. Let's walk
Sure.
through some examples,
Yeah. Well, let's do an example. Like a great one to do would be my Andrews County, Texas one. I did late last year. I think we bought it in September. It was 345 acres. So, I mean, I'll do any size really. It could be 30, 40, 50 acres as long as the economics work. But usually it's at least 100 acres, I would say. Most of the land now is in the 100 plus range that we're buying in bulk. So this Andrews piece, 345 acres, I bought for $510,000. It was about $1,500 per acre. And we used some private money on that one. So I came out of pocket, I believe it was $60,000, and the private guy came in with $450,000. And on a 5-year note at 18% interest was my private money on that. I'm paying that guy like $11,000 per month. But on the sales side, we had 345 acres. And there's a good kind of loophole in Texas where if you stay above 10 plus acres and you kind of follow a couple of other little things, you can just run a surveyor out there and start selling the land immediately. So we got a surveyor out there. We did 32 separate 10 plus acre lots. And each one of those sold for $4,000 to $5,000 per acre. So, the total gross on the project was, call it $1.5 million. Conservatively, and then I was in it for 510, but probably 50 or 60 out of my own pocket, and all of that stuff, man, it sold so quick. We had that. I actually just sent out my closing package, my final one on it, this week, so that puts us at 3 months to sell 32 lots. So it was a good project, and I originated a bunch of notes. I like to do the owner financing game and owner finance lots off to people, so I've been slowly selling a few of those notes. I've started cashing out by selling those at a discount to investors.
Yeah, that's pretty great. And so I guess walk me through that piece a little bit. So you borrowed some of it from a good bit, 450 from a private money investor or lender.
Mm-hmm.
At 18 APR, which doesn't much matter what the number is when you're making gains like this. And
Yep.
so, right. And then, but explain to me how you're able to owner finance, with having to also pay back that individual at the same time,
Yeah, it's a good question. You touched on the interest rate real quick. People sometimes get bent out of shape on that, but it's like when your project sells in 3 or 6 months, or you can, if I would have offered it at $3,000 per acre cash, like just give me $30K for a 10-acre lot, I probably would have all this stuff sold in 6 months, and the interest kind of becomes irrelevant.
Yeah.
But I do like that, carrying the notes. And so what we utilize is a wraparound note where we wrap that second lien into the first with the underlying lender. And I have a investor friendly deed of trust that we use that basically removes that due on sale clause. And it specifically says that I can get partial releases for pieces of land. So, if I were to sell one of those 32 lots for cash and Joe Schmo wants to go build a beautiful home on it, and his lender says, hey, we need this piece of land free and clear, I can go to my underlying lender and do a little prorated calculation, 1 divided by 32 or 10 divided by 345 or whatever the acreage is, 10.6 divided by 345 and times the remaining principal amount, and write that guy a check on his private money note and hand that piece of land free and clear to my customer. So it's a pretty powerful technique. And I've been surprised that, because like one of the main pushbacks will be like, oh, well, don't the customers have like an issue with this underlying lien on the property? Like, they come and buy a piece of land from me and they say, oh, you got a $450,000 loan against the property. What's going on here? Surprisingly enough, I have, like, when I first started doing this, and I think it was 2020, like I was like, man, Mike's speaking about to sell these, and like I've maybe lost only 7 or 8 deals because of that underlying, like the customers most of the time don't answer. They're just like, where's my paperwork? I'm ready to go, sign, notarize, and mail it back to me. I mean, a lot of times I don't even get questions on it, which is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of scary, but savvy people do ask about it. Then I got to explain the whole situation. But yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was hoping you'd go there with it, and I guess there are some deals you have to go ahead and take, either cash plus another loan or a full payout to where you can replace that loan if you wanted to. So that's it's pretty powerful technique. Okay, so we've kind of established the acquire a piece of land, subdivide it, sell it to individuals. How are you marketing? How are you finding the client? What client are you targeting? Let's talk a little bit, because you can go set this whole thing up, borrow some money from a private lender, but if you don't have a path, if you can't show that lender the path to sell these, probably not going to give you the loan, right? So how do you kind of build that out and convince them and all that kind of stuff?
Well, let's touch on 2 sides here, both how I find the deal and then how I sell it and find my clients. Let's start with the sales side first, because you asked. It's funny because I just got a text I'm looking at my phone here real quick from my client who's like, what kind of deal can we work on this piece of land? Like, it's got to the point where we've done so much marketing, have so much stuff coming up. It's like, it's scary, man. Like the amount of people coming to me for land is kind of insane. We do a lot of Facebook ads. So that's been super powerful for me. We do Facebook Marketplace, and what I like to do is leave my Marketplace posts up. So I probably got 30 or 40 just organically sitting up, but so does my ops manager. We're running business page Facebook ads on it. On a big project like this, such as the Andrews one, we would run both Facebook Marketplace and Facebook business page ads. And so I think I probably spent $3,000 or so on Facebook advertising to sell all of these lots, which is not bad at all. I mean, when you take into account I don't have a realtor or giving up any commission or anything like that, it's way more expensive than like a pay per list MLS listing, which we utilize those as well. Or, like a land.com, which is a good solid place to list your land on. They charge you like $500 a month or so. If I'm spending $3,000 in 3 months, like $1,000 per month in Facebook marketing, I'd much rather do that, because again, now I have my brand and face and recognition out there. And now I got these customers coming to me. Okay, where else do you have land near Andrews? Where else do you have land in, Midland or West Texas? So Facebook is super powerful. And one thing I like to utilize for the lenders, you asked that, like, how can you ensure these lenders are, getting good collateral and the land is actually going to sell? A kind of proprietary thing I like to think of it as is the Facebook demand test. Is kind of something that I've coined, and I tell all my students and all my guys, this is what any big subdivide, and I do it anytime I go into a new area. We pretty much, like, I don't know, have you ever been on like Instagram or social media and you see like e-com ads and you click into the page and it looks like, man, this is something bogus, like what's going on here? That is like people on the back end running ads and seeing what their cost per click is, how much it's going to cost them to acquire a customer, etc. And so we do the same thing with land. Before we even buy the land, we throw up a Facebook ad and run 100, 200, 300 bucks to it, keep it simple, and see what our cost per message is. Like anything under 10 bucks, you got yourself a pretty good project. Anything under $5 per lead per message is a lead in this case, you're like, man, there's a lot of demand for this land. So we actually post it up like coming soon and see what our demand is before we buy it.
And then I presume you can put a nice little package together with some history on that and be like, hey, Mr. Private Lender, this is why it's going to sell, and here's how
exactly
a couple other projects are done. Yeah.
And real quick, another good tips, because like Texas is a non-disclosure state, so people are always like, oh, how can I comp this land? Or, how can I, obviously you can find someone to pull MLS sales for you. Like that's pretty solid. But what I like to do is if you go to like texasfile.com is the Texas system, and kind of every state has their own online like clerk or recorder or courthouse database, and you go in there. And yeah, it's a non-disclosure state, but when I originate these notes, I have to record a deed of trust and a warranty deed with vendor's lien, and it has that the note that my customer is carrying right on there. So like I'll go and find any nearby developments of 10 acres in this case and see what sort of deed of trusts, warranty deeds have been recorded, and see what their principal is that they're paying on. And I assume like a 10% down payment they gave the lender or the bank, and you can back yourself into a direct comparable sale.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it is a non-disclosure state, but maybe not so much for lending versus ownership, right? So I've
Yes.
never explored that side of things. That makes a lot of sense. And so let's kind of flip the coin over for a second, John. So we've kind of gone through the strategy, but you mentioned that you on this one Andrews deal we were talking about, you had a $450,000 private lender, right? Well, just so happens on this show there is a lot of individuals who are looking to invest in things like this, lend money, invest money, things of that sort on the equity side. So how does it work for an investor of your company? What are what types of loan security do they have? We kind of alluded to some of it, but let's talk
Yeah.
about the experience that someone who wanted to lend on one of these subdivision projects might look like.
Sure. So, an investor who lends on a project like this is going to get first lien, fully collateralized by the land. So, we de-risk it basically by, stepping them into the seller's shoes, so to speak. I like to do a lot of seller financing, but a lot of these sellers are like, no, I want my cash today. Maybe it's an estate or whatever. And the piece of land is so good. I'm like, God, I'd rather have a seller financing deal, but, let me bring in a private guy. So in steps the private guy or girl, and we do like kind of just a short, like 1 or 2 pager, like, okay, this is kind of what I expect the project to look like, how long it's going to take to sell, price points, kind of a basic underwriting. And then, a lot of people, I'm fortunate because of the social media following and kind of my name and everything now. So it's like, okay, a lot of people can see the vision, trust me, which trust and credibility is a huge deal, especially as a beginner. That's why it can be challenging for a beginner to go out and raise 450,000. I don't recommend it because you do have to be responsible with other people's money. But from the investor side here, it doesn't matter what I do. I mean, it does, but they're only receiving payments from Jazz Land. That's my main land entity. So they're getting a check in the month from Jazz Land. But at the end of the day, if something were to happen to me or the project, mainly if something happens to me or I don't pay or whatever, they're bulk chunk land at what I found it at, which is probably a smoking deal. It's probably 60, 70, 80 cents on the dollar as is, as a giant chunk. And they got first lien on that. So they're just going to take that land back and they're going to list it and sell it or subdivide it themselves. A lot of these investors are pretty land savvy and they do a simple subdivide themselves. So the risk to them is, something happening to me or the project going sideways. But at the end of the day, they have first lien on the land. They're going to take that sucker back and probably just list it with a broker or a realtor at, 70 to 80 cents on the dollar and still make a little bit of money. And they got a deed of trust with a promissory note secured.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, even just to be clear, even at the basis that you're buying these at, like, okay, maybe you don't get your full 2 years of interest if things really went sideways, but you can probably still recover principal, especially if you've got some money in the deal too.
Yeah, and I think you'd make a little bit of money as an investor. Like the Andrews County one that I bought at $510,000, $1,500 per acre. As is, I think you could probably sell that thing for $2,000 or $2,500 per acre. So it's kind of, the trust is in my skill, I guess, in finding deals, or any operator that you're working with as an investor. Like, is it a good deal? That's what we're lending on the real estate, hopefully. And it's like in real estate, obviously, you make the money on the buy side. So that's the key.
So give some nuggets to my listener base here. As a private investor looking at maybe funding a land flipping or land subdivision deal, I'm saying in rare cases, will they be the expert? They're probably going to be relying on you to be the expert, but what are some, whether they're working with you or anyone out there, what are some main diligence points that an investor could do to say, okay, I think I believe in this deal and I can validate what, John or someone like John is telling me?
Well, you're going to want to find some comparables or pricing, as I just mentioned, on the acreage as a whole in bulk. You don't want the operator, being myself, presenting you a project where the land is being bought like at full market value. You want to get that whole piece of land at a good deal. That way, your collateral is in a good spot. You obviously want a credible, experienced operator. I think it's important for them to ask, whoever's running the project, hey, what other subdivisions have you done in the past? And, show me some evidence that you can actually do this. I think from the mechanic standpoint, there's really 2 ways to structure it. Some investors just like the interest and getting the monthly checks. I think 16 to 18% as a private money person is fair. If they're looking to get out of the deal or cash out sooner, I mean, you could incentivize or, kind of work towards, hey, let's get the investor preferred returns, pay them out first, then some sort of profit split, whether it's 50-50 or it's usually anywhere from 50-50 to 70-30 in favor of the operator. So the investor would be getting, 30 to 50% of the profit and getting paid out first. That's a good way to structure it. You want to make sure that there's title insurance and the property is free and clear. Obviously, the stickier and hairier the situation, the riskier it is. We close all these massive projects with title insurance, and it's all, T's are crossed and I's are dotted type deal. Then the market, you want to make sure you're in a good market and this land is actually going to sell. I mean, are there sales for the smaller acreage lots that the subdivider is proposing? I mean, I've never had a issue to date, knock on wood, where the land hasn't sold. Sometimes it takes longer than others. Like I'm running one right now that's pushing a year and we're only like 70 or 80% sold out. I was like, man, I'm probably not going to do another deal in that market. That was Fort Stockton, Texas. But every project still I go into, I'm like, man, I'm nervous. Like, is this actually going to sell? Like, I've done this dozens of times, but I still get like the butterflies. Like, am I actually going to be able to sell all this land? And every single time it sells, at a pretty decent pace. Sometimes it outperforms, other times it slows and is a little bit less than what we think. But you got to be, you don't want to buy a piece of land and that isn't going to be able to sell and the market isn't there and going to be able to sell in a timely manner. So I think the sales for the smaller lots and the velocity, so to speak.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess the last question I've got here before we get into some of your programs and things of that sort. What so on the land itself, like for example, when I go buy an apartment building or a self-storage building, right, I've got to go get an environmental study and make sure it's safe for people to live on, like all sorts of stuff like that. What sort of diligence in the state of Texas, which is really where you operate, what sort of diligence on the land are you needing to do before you can subdivide and sell off, if any? I mean, it may not be a big thing in Texas.
So this is one of the major components, if not the biggest component of subdividing, and why it's so important to know what you're doing, because you don't want to buy a piece of land and figure out that you need to have some crazy study or engineering deal done on it and it's going to blow up your economics. And it depends on state and it depends on county. Texas does make it pretty simple. If you're outside of city limits, 99% of the times you're not going to have any issues. There's going to be no restrictions. You keep it over 10 acres, you're probably going to be okay with just a survey. You need to double check with the counties because some counties are going to want a drainage study. If you're building roads, like if you're trying to go under 10 acres and do a major subdivide, which we're doing right now in West Texas, we're doing a 20-foot wide caliche gravel road, but some counties are going to want you to do a 25, 26-foot wide paved road, which is going to cost you $150 per linear foot versus $20 per linear foot on a gravel road, and it's going to blow up your economics. So you got to know what you're getting into going in. And if you just Google the county, call it Andrews County subdivision regulations, pretty much every county, whether it's Texas, Tennessee, Virginia, has a PDF. That's the first thing you want to do is pull up that PDF, start getting familiar with what they're going to require. Then you're going to want to get on the phone with the county, whether they have a planning and zoning. Some of them have a subdivision coordinator. Some of them it's straight to the commissioners or the commissioner's court. And you're going to want to say, hey, this is kind of what I'm proposing. What are you going to make me do? And what I always tell folks is I'll actually do like a Google Earth mock-up and screenshot like my polygons and how I'm going to cut this land up. And I will get with the county and provide that to them. Like, hey, this is kind of what we're planning on doing, the acreage size, the location. What do you think? I'm reading the regulations that's saying I can get away with a gravel road or I don't need to do a road. What are you guys thinking? And just make sure you're on the same page. And another good tip is you can actually email and loop in the county attorney before the project starts on some of these subdivision regulations. The county sometimes can be a little tricky and they don't know what they're doing, or the county people don't know how to enforce it. And so you got to go to the attorney and kind of loop them in pre-project on an email.
Yeah, that's good stuff, John. So this is a really insightful show we're doing here. I mean, it's simple, but it's like, if you know what you're doing, it's simple, And so, let's pivot a little bit. I got a couple of questions I want to ask you, and folks, hang around because we're going to get into, how you can learn a little more about this. There's no way John can teach us everything there is to know about this in one episode, whether you are a potential investor of this or, a student. So first question, John, what is your superpower could be life or business, and how does it serve you well?
I think it's either. I think finding deals, like finding real estate deals, but at a more high level, I think it's the ability to learn and to learn quickly. I don't know. I feel like I pick things up relatively quick, and I just kind of plow all that into the land game. And I love finding deals. So like, I don't know. I'm constantly on land.com, realtor.com, just like scanning, looking for deals. A good thing that people can do, whether it's land or multifamily or commercial, whatever it is, single family, is just do like mock underwritings. So like I'll find a piece of land that I think's a deal, and like I'll do a quick 10-15 minute underwrite. Like, okay, how am I going to subdivide this? How's the economics going to look? What am I going to need to pay for roads, etc.? Look at the regulations. Oh shoot, they want paved roads. I can't do it. And so like the more times you just look at deals and do those mock underwritings, like it just becomes secondhand for you. And boom, next time you see a project, it just sticks right out, and you know it's a deal.
Yeah, you got to know what they look and smell like, and you got to kiss a lot of frogs before you find the deal. It's typically how it goes. But
I like it.
All right. So next question: what is your biggest failure? Just talk about a time things didn't go well.
Yeah, man. I'm dealing with it right now. Actually, it's this subdivision we have going in Howard County, Texas. And this started back in late 2020. We bought the project. We didn't know the subdivision regulations. This was like one of my first subdivides, and I had an engineer, surveyor say, "Oh, you can do it this way." And I just relied on him and didn't do my own research, which was a big learning experience and no. And he made this thing up. And we thought we were all good. And we actually started selling off the lots. And then the county came back to us and said, "No, this isn't an actual approved legal subdivision. We need you to plat this." And then lo and behold, to go through the platting process, we had to go back to all the customers we sold to, get them to sign. They wanted us to do some ridiculous roadways and fire suppression systems. And this was like dry land. Like, how are you going to do a fire suppression system with a holding tank of like 3,000 gallons when you can't even get a well out there? Like, there's no way that's happening. So we ended up finding a couple of loopholes, long story short, and we pretty much got pushed to the finish line now. But one of my customers, he got really upset and threatened to sue us, actually. So we're going through that now. He's making it what I think are a couple of outlandish claims, like, you didn't build a paved road. And I'm like, dude, the county subdivision regs never even said you needed a paved road. And so just things like that. But at the end of the day, we're going to refund him his money. I think that's the most appropriate thing to do. If someone is that upset, I usually don't like doing refunds. Like, I'm a no refund type of guy, but like there are certain situations, this being one of them, I don't want to get involved in a lawsuit. I know he doesn't want to get involved in a lawsuit. The dude's a good guy. He just wants his money back. So we're just going to refund him. But it's a big learning experience for everybody, I think.
Yeah, it's amazing. The devil is always in the details, folks. I mean, it's what you don't know can be a problem. So do your research, whether you're investing or doing deals, and or talk with someone who has. But I'm curious, just the engineer who said that was okay. I mean, I'm sure he probably has errors and omissions insurance. Was that not considered an error on his part?
It's a good question. It's so long now, and the state regulations have changed for subdividing. I think it'd probably be a little bit hard to fight him on it, but I should have. Like, that's a good point. Like, back a year or two ago, I should have been like, "Hey, y'all pay for my new engineering reports and fire suppression system or whatever." But I think it just, at a larger scope, it just goes to show, like, so many folks who do this think you can just call up the engineer, call up the surveyor, and they're going to know, like, okay, this is what you can do. This is how you can subdivide it. Like, folks, a lot of times the county officials don't even know. That's why I said you need to loop in the county attorney, because these regulations and things can be complicated, and people, let's be honest. I mean, people just don't care enough to know the regulations, to read the law. This stuff can get, like you said, devils in the details. And so you really need to know what you're doing and always do the research yourself, or at least double check and verify it.
Yeah, and then the world of policymaking is difficult. I mean, things are never going to cover every scenario out there. So just know that, right?
Definitely.
All right, next question. Let's hop to some of the, the stuff you're doing from a coaching perspective, books, materials, things of that sort. What do you have out there to help people learn how to invest / do subdivide deals like this?
Yeah, I try to put out a lot of free stuff. If you just go to johnjasniak.com/land, got a free course, got a free book. My YouTube is growing. I'm putting more emphasis into that. We spend a lot of time and energy. We were just filming more content yesterday, just case studies, how-tos, more entertainment stuff, crazy stuff. But all that free stuff, you could really figure it out if you wanted to, I think, with some blood, sweat, and tears. But yeah, we do have a private program where I got the course, and I think it's close to 100 folks now. We do a private WhatsApp chat. It's all led by me, walking folks through how to navigate these regulations, how to find the deals, everything down to like, hey, my Facebook ad's not getting approved. Like, how do I fix it? It's pretty crazy, the granularity we get into in there. So yeah, it's a tricky world out there, especially in subdividing. I was thinking about this the other day. What's the saying? It's like simple, but not easy. Like, it's simple, but not easy. Like, yes, you can do this. Anyone can do this from anywhere, but is it easy? Like, it takes work. Like, this is not a get rich quick scheme,
It never is. And
Nope.
with that mic drop moment, John, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. I appreciate you calling in from an active job site you're on in West Texas, and look forward to watching your continued success. But thanks for coming on the show and sharing some nuggets with our people. And just appreciate you.
Thanks so much for having me, Chad. I enjoyed it.
All right, everyone. This has been another episode of the Real Estate Runway Podcast. As we mentioned in the beginning, if you got any value out of the show, folks, pay it forward. Share the show with someone, like it, subscribe, comment. Just do something to interact with it to where the algorithms will say, hey, I enjoyed watching this show. I'll show it to other people. Okay? With that being said, this has been another episode of the Real Estate Runway Podcast. Signing off for now.
We hope this episode was insightful and brought value to your day. If so, please be awesome and leave us a 5-star review. Find out how Team Quattro can help you at thequattroway.com. Until next time, this is the Real Estate Runway Podcast.